Shalom, hello everyone. So I wanted to do a part two on the news chat and clarify a few things and talk about it in detail a little further. As mentioned in the first part of the video, the um, the nous is this heart mind. Again, the way that the early church fathers and the way the Christian tradition kind of dealt with it and formulated with this concept, this earlier Greek concept called the nous, that again is in the New Testament, saying that we have the nous, or the mind of Christ. So the nous is this heart mind, and it has the capacity to engage and to see things through what? Through the energy of love and through the clarity of the mind that the divine has. Now, in addition to the nous, that I wanted to talk about, that I mentioned earlier, is that it combines itself with truth, and as we see in the New Testament, it talks about that the Holy Spirit being the Spirit of truth, and so truth is a concept of the divine body itself, and not necessarily something that is a static idea, but an actual energetic force that produces the highest nature of reflection or refraction of the divine being in all essences. And so when we're talking about truth, what we're talking about literally, as Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, when we're talking about the truth, what we're actually even talking about is the Spirit itself, because we are told that the Spirit of truth is a component of the Holy Spirit, number one, and number two, the Holy Spirit in the Gospel of John, Jesus says that the Holy Spirit will guide you into all truth, and so this nous in this truth become this sort of commingling dance with one another. And the guiding part of this is what I want to talk about as well, which is that one of the ways that we kind of lost ourselves in Christianity, with the, somewhat necessary but also controversial aspect of creating a canon, 1700 years ago by the church, for the people who decided to do that. It really kind of crystallized the psyche into, basically, even when we read the text itself, we assume that it means that there's no truth beyond the text. Not to say that there isn't that there's truth in the text, but what we see here, even in Jesus saying that it will guide you into truth, is that we're going to constantly continue to grow and evolve like a plant or like a tree or anything in creation. And just as the text itself, the Old Testament, whatever, was growing and expanding with each subsequent generation of prophets or groups of people, and then we even had the New Testament, this thing was supposed to continue to grow and grow and grow. This tree was supposed to grow, but powers that be decided to change that. And for the last 1700 years, we've really kind of solidified our pursuit of truth. But what we actually have when we get the Holy Spirit is we actually get the guide. And I'm going to be cheeky here. We get the Spirit guide, the Holy Spirit guide, which actually takes us into higher understandings, because it's partnered with nous, again, the heart mind, to see clearly the reality, the nature of reality, and to see things from the aspect of the divine love. So, as mentioned in the first talk, our nous is expanding, it's growing inside of us, and because of that, and there's ways that we're going to get this thing stronger and more dialed in, our unfolding, our understanding of truth and its essence will come through this field of perception that we're going to continue to see. Again, it's going to be a new mode of spiritual perception. One that will allow us to encounter and re-articulate healthier worldviews in order to bring harmony into creation, into relationships, to family, healing, and so on and so forth. So, but that only comes with right vision, with right insight, with right care, with right compassion, right love, and so on and so forth. So we have these gates inside our being that have been blocked, that have been locked up. We've even said we don't even have gates inside our being and whatnot. And as a result of it, we really kind of crystallized ourselves, especially since the Protestant Revolution. And that's speaking as someone as a Protestant, but especially since the Protestant Revolution, where we really shut down the gates of our being and perception. And that's what ultimately led to a lot of what led to the Enlightenment, which came out of Protestant Revolution, and which then also led to all forms of atheism and just pure materialistic worldviews. Because our spiritual sensitivity, our our faculties, our sense organs that allow us to see and perceive into the spirit, into different dimensions or different aspects of reality, so on and so forth. Or even just the simplicity of feeling the earth, or even just our body. All of those things they kind of just they got turned down dramatically. And then through the DNA, through generation after generation after generation, and we're kind of, especially the mystics in this generation, the ones that are interested in growing these sort of things, that have wanted to transition, we're the first generation in a long time that's willing to reprogram the DNA back into the way that our ancestors, at least, let's say, defaultly lived, even with their just sensibility to be able to sense and perceive various aspects of the divine nature. So this is something that's coming, something that's changing. But again, one of the things I want to iterate again is that the divine truth is going to shift our reality. And one of the ways these things can even look like is if you imagine yourself maybe even growing up in let's say a very fundamentalist or conservative background, which a lot of people have grown up in. And even for myself, who grew up mainline evangelical, and then you get introduced to the Holy Spirit, and you get moved into a charismatic thing, and you get opened up to a whole new world. That's one dimension, right, of going deeper into that divine reality, where that kind of breaks open and you realize, wow, there's a whole other new world here. And so if you could imagine yourself leaping into that new pond. Now imagine if you were to leap into a pond 10 times the size of that pond. That next leap, you could say, is coming. And it's coming fast. And we're going to be able to sense it. It's not just going to be a theoretical reality. It's going to be experienced. It's going to be realized. It's going to be touch, taste, felt, seen by these sort of things that are inside of us. And so, again, so the nous being increased through Christ, and then the Holy Spirit through truth, and increasing, these two things coming together are going to continue to rip open our understanding of reality. But not just on a cosmological or conceptual level, but even as a heart level, at a relational level with one another and the earth, and our relationship to the creation and to one another. And so this, this it'll be a whole new opening up, but we can't open up, we can't become sons or daughters of the divine, or brides, or whatever language you want to use, depending on where you're at. But these sort of things, it's not just for some sort of mystical experience, but it's actually for a transformation. But the transformations are also not just on a practical level, but also, now to flip it on this, not just on a practical level, but on a theoretical level, on a conceptual and understanding level. And the understanding is going to re-engineer a whole new experience of reality for all of us that are moving in that. And the thing is that the further we get into this, the further we get into the bliss of the union state. And then as that happens, more things begin to open up. And more fear gets released out of our system, more tension, more traumas, and these sort of, let's call them cycles of entrapment that we have from generation to generation, are going to begin to dissolve. And that begins with us. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. And I know that a lot of you are going through your own transformation and your own growth and your own awakening in a lot of ways. And there's other things that God's increasing in your life and different sort of things, which is exciting. And we need all of those things to, continue to take place inside of all of us. But as I mentioned, and just, I'll throw it out there again like I did on the first part, our understanding of the nature of God, not in His love, or not in its love, I would even say, but in its divine aspect and its familial aspect, is going to reopen itself up to us, because we have to be able to see it, because our psyches are having a hard time holding this sort of lower level concept of God, which is why we had someone a couple hundred years ago by the philosopher Nietzsche saying God is dead. It's not literally that God is dead. It was the concept that had been held up for the last 12 to 1500 years that was now causing psychosis, because it wasn't a highest truth of the nature of certain things, where we think of God as this punishing, man in the sky Zeusian sort of figure that is controlling things like a dictator. Like that thing is dying. So and then true nature of the all-loving, giving aspect of the Father, rooted in love, is going to be released. And so we can't, the thing is that as we get deeper into this, truth is going to be a major part of our reality. Now, it's hard to even really talk about it, because truth isn't even necessarily, it does birth itself as a concept, but don't want you to think of truth as a concept totally, because that's sometimes how we think about it. We think of things in dogmatic, linear progressions. Remember, it says the Holy Spirit will guide you into all truth. So truth is what? A living reality of the divine being. So that's why Jesus says, I can say I am the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. Well, the way and life are both what? Living and active things. And we think of the truth in between those two sentences as some sort of stagnant, sort of closed off, concept. But it's not really a concept in that sense. It can be at times, but really it's really about a way of living, it's a way of being, and it's a way of experiencing, and it's a way of seeing, and it's a way of encountering, and it's a way of unioning. It's actually a proactive experience that becomes illuminatory to our world. And And again, to put it in concept for you, think about you and your own journey where you get deeper into the truth and the nature of God. Think about your own journey where God has led you, and you're like, whoa, 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 along the way. Yeah, you learn new things, or you see new things, or you experience new things, and then you're like, wow, I have a new parameter of this sort of like view of truth that I didn't see before. But that's it, because it's a journey. It's a living being, almost a reality that comes out of the divine unfoldment. So, and the Holy Spirit is going to lead us into it, as John says. The Holy Spirit will lead us into it, and there we get divine understanding when we become one with the Logos, the divine understanding. And we're going to really reawaken to all of this exciting new possibilities within the divine being. And as I mentioned, it's going to be conceptual, it's going to be experiential, and it's also going to be practical and played out with how we engage and how we do life with one another, and how we then engage, let's say, from our Christian dimension, how we engage the world and how we build relationships and build bridges, and how we begin to understand the way how humanity is and how it unfolds. Because we're gonna see from the Nous, you begin to see from the divine perspective, not from the relatively lower human perspective, not even from, let's call it, the astral perspective, and not even necessarily from the noetic perspective, but you're going to see from the divine perspective through the heart-mind field of a bunch of different things. And yes, it does bring in the noetic, yes, it does bring in the astral, and yes, it does bring in the terrestrial. But all of these various activities are going to be transformed. So, as mentioned, I think I'm going to do a thing on the Nous, a deeper class on it. We're going to go into activities, different things to deal with it, probably in like 2 or 3 months. Maybe like the end of October is probably what I'm thinking. So keep your eyes tuned. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go deeper into this, and I'm excited watching all of you unfold. I'm excited to watch all of you guys awaken in the ways that everyone is in the community. Lastly, I would say, don't let fear dictate your journey. Do not let fear dictate your journey. Do not let fear dictate your journey, and don't let someone control you through fear. Be guided by the Nous. Be guided by the heart mind. Be guided by the Holy Spirit as it perceives into and feels into reality. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. For perfect love casts out all fear, right? So we know these things. So we need to open up, continue to open up into the realm of divine love, and be open for journeying, be open to take chances, be open to be curious, be open to take questions, to ask questions, like I said in the part 1, and be open to, and most importantly, be open to the nature of the divine, which is love. Allow yourself to heal from all of these sort of like wrong ways that you perceive, or let's call them unhealthy ways that we were passed down, unbalanced ideas about God's being to us, and begin to feel with your being for these things. Begin to feel with the coming emergent spiritual senses that God is bringing into us. There's a lot more I want to say, actually, but I'll leave it at that. So, anyways, I'm excited. Our journey into Christ is, it's fun and it's exciting. And when we are participating in this reality, we're participating in the very spirit that engendered Mary for the Son. So this is an exciting thing. Not to say that we become literally these Messiah figures or anything, but that what we are co-participating in this dance, in this being guided, like John said, we are then creating this union journey experience together where we're becoming this new being, where we are this new being on one dimension, but also in another being. We are and we're becoming. And these two mystic polarities are actually coming in one and together to release the tension from the not yet, but also then to release the tension of why don't I feel at all? As both truths are actually here. So journeying into truth is journeying into Jesus, into the nature that I would say into the nature of that showed, I would say, the nature of Jesus that showed itself out onto the world in the way it's displayed in the Gospels. A journey into truth will lead into behavioral activities that will reflect in its own creative way with each individual this sort of harmonious image. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. And allow yourself to open up to the divine in all of its possibility and in its transcendence and in its immanence and in its beyondness that we could ever comprehend. Don't allow yourself to think you figured it all out, because we are moving together in this and expanding into it, and we have a lot of ways to go, but we're getting back the tools to be able to do a lot of stuff. And that's what I'm talking about the reemergence of tools, but our understanding and whatnot is going to continue to increase, and our activity of life. So with the way we deal with these things. Thank you guys, and I'll probably see some of you guys in a few months for the Nous thing. Have a great rest of your day. Shalom.